I've usually read this Far Away From Where, which is a novel in itself. It should be good reading. I'm going to read it myself.
Okay. Well, as tall as you. Well, I actually think I don't need a mic. Everyone who knows me knows how loud I am, but anyway. There's a book review too, which I haven't read. I should have read it before I wrote my speech. Okay. So, welcome everyone. It's my great honour to participate today in the Australian launch of my dear friend Harav, Rabbi Yehiel Greenimann's novel, Far Away From Where. I better hold it. Here we are, celebrating in what I call shtetl Melbourne, but today it feels as if the whole world is a shtetl. This book was written mostly in Jerusalem, is set mostly in post-Holocaust Europe, and is dedicated with love not only to the author's parents and brothers, not only to the thousands of survivors and their children, but also to the Jewish community of Melbourne, Australia. Yes, you can take the boy out of Melbourne, but you can't, thankfully, seem to take Melbourne out of the boy. So, Far Away From Where is a very appropriate title for this book, I think. Far Away From Where with a question mark. Although perhaps not quite in the sense that the author intended. The author claims that his book is a work of fiction, but the overwhelming vitality of the characters and many of the incidents seem to be, to me, to not only be the product of good writing, although that is not lacking, but the result of the author's intimacy with quite a few of the real people and real events depicted in its 230 or so pages. One of the fates of our generation of first-generation children of refugee Holocaust survivors seems to be to have absorbed the experiences of our parents, whether they were openly, incessantly and obsessively spoken about, or just as obsessively not spoken about, into our blood, into our bones, into the very marrow of our bones. So it is a triumph not only of talent, but of the will, of persistence and perseverance, of devoted dedication to and belief in the future, to succeed in transforming this passive absorption of painful past experiences into a creative work of art, a novel. A yasher koyach to the author for all these reasons, a mazel tov and a kol hakavod, or as we say here, good on you, mate. I never thought I'd live to say this, but Yehiel, formerly John Green of Melbourne, has been my friend for over 50 years.
You are very tolerant.
There's a first time for everything. My first strong memory of John is while we were on Shmirah, on guard duty, together at Habbo Camp. I think this may have been the first time we philosophised together, if one can call conversations one has when one's under the age of 10 philosophising. Perhaps not. It's over half a century ago, oy vey, but it has stuck in my mind, and not only because I think one of us was up a tree the whole time, or perched on a high fence or a wall, probably me, that's how I got the name Tom, but somehow I really think it was John. Strong memory of that. Half a century later, John has been a Masorti conservative rabbi for 20 years. Yes, John, 1991 is 20 years. An educator specialising in Holocaust education and teaching teenagers, young adults and other educators about Jewish resistance during World War II for even longer. He is a peace activist. He's a member of Rabbis for Human Rights. Every year when the olive picking season starts in Israel, I know I will at some stage hear his voice on ABC Radio National when he's interviewed about protecting local Arab villagers trying to pick olives from their own trees from their Jewish settler neighbours' efforts to stop them. This is a special, gutsy person, unafraid of what people think. Or perhaps he embodies the deeper meaning of courage. Afraid, but more afraid of betraying his own principles, his own integrity. John is a long-time resident of Jerusalem. 30 years, John? A loving husband, father of 4, grandfather of 1, son and brother, and always and still a loyal friend, not just to me, but to many, and to the Melbourne he left 30 or so years ago. In our Indigenous First Nation people's words, John Green's dreaming and his songlines are right here in Melbourne. John is surrounded by strong women and acknowledges and celebrates their contributions to his life. His mother, Hannah, who should be quelling with nachas today, his beloved wife, Debbie, in Jerusalem, his artistic daughter, Nechama, who created the mysterious cover of this book with its faded, haunted old photographs, inside what I think is the prow of a boat being stirred through both water and deep space with its twinkling stars, one of them clearly a Jewish star.
It's supposed to be the Southern Cross.
Southern Cross.
Well, didn't get that. He acknowledges other people who have helped him on his creative journey towards completing this first novel. Told me he's already started the second. Many more of them women. Perhaps, John, you are a true snag, a sensitive new age guy, when it's no longer so fashionable to be one. Although John also apologises, I think in the acknowledgements, that he did not take all of their advice, that, quote, the faults are mine and the strengths partially theirs, I have to say that I didn't notice any faults. I found Far Away From Where to be a compelling read, an easy read, despite its difficult and often heartbreaking content. It was a real page-turner, which I actually couldn't put down till I finished it, and which has haunted me long after. Perhaps this is because John's novel so vividly brings to life the earliest post-war struggles of young Jewish people, like the main characters Janosch and Eva, to recover their physical, mental and emotional strength after the devastation of the Shoah. John gets right inside these characters, and the narrative flow is natural and unforced. Bora, the third main character, powerful, an ex-partisan exuding an air of menace and scores still to be settled, is just as compelling, if not more so. Janosch's diaries are a terrific device to allow us into his inner world and to fill in the narrative gaps. My understanding of historical events that I did know about beforehand, like the first Pesach Seder after the war in 1946 at Waldenburg in the American occupied zone, was deepened by John's detailed descriptions and research. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to read this book. It is truly worthwhile and actually an important contribution to our understanding of what life was like in the chaos and rubble immediately following the end of this terrible period in our history and in the history of the so-called civilised world. It's also a testament to the resilience and everyday courage of so-called ordinary young people who've lost everything and everyone, following their first footsteps into an unknown future. John has gotten right inside the skins and the psyches of these people and conveyed the atmosphere of the times with great empathy and conviction. I'll conclude by reading you the words with which John ends his acknowledgement section. May we all be blessed with joy and gratitude in the ongoing adventure and miracle of life. Amen of Amen. Amen. May I add to this by blessing those who enrich our lives, not only by their example, but also by their creative endeavours. John, we mean you. And with this blessing, I declare Yehiel Greenimann, John Green's book, Far Away from Where, officially launched in Australia. Do you want to speak? I think you should. Author.
The answer to the question, do I want to speak, is no, but I'll say a few words. I didn't prepare a speech. There's some wine over there. I want to drink l'chaim. And this was 6 years it took me. It was a lot bigger when it started. It went through some editing. And there was a previous book that never came out. The guy who wrote the review, Jeff Green, is a published author. He's written 5 novels, including one in Hebrew, despite being from Boston. I brought him a manuscript years ago, decades ago. And he looked at it and he said, this is a lot of books, not one book. Go back and get back to work. I still have a lot to learn. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of lonely endeavor to write. I've been doing it all my life, but I've been doing it very personally and privately in diaries, poems I write for myself. I reached a conclusion in this book, which is kind of obvious. There's a conclusion at the other end of a life as a committed Zionist. And I might upset some people here. I'm no longer sure about that ideology. I'm no longer sure about any ideology. I think that there's something much more important than ideology. I'm wearing a kippah, I'm a rabbi. More important than religion, established religion, that's life. To me, when I understand what God is, even though I try and live an orthodox lifestyle, that's a clothing I wear or a tool I use to enhance my spiritual life. To me, God is something beyond those things. And even if the hero here, Yarosh, is an atheist and she becomes his wife Eva and dabbles in tradition, but it says I don't believe in God, to me, and this can open a debate, of course, the life force that there was in these people, and you see everywhere in the world, that's something divine. That's where I find God. I spent 10 years teaching the subject of the Holocaust, forever doing an MA, which I finally finished, and we did seminars for Israeli kids with survivors. We bring someone to talk about the ghettos, someone to talk about the camps. And there are a few interesting experiences, and some of those people are in that novel, bits of them, mixed into, first of all, the incredible courage to build a life after they went through, there are no words that express, I think, understanding or gratitude, despite the difficulties of being the second generation of that heroism. And a few people know this. Bora, the character in the book, is in some way based on my father, whose memory I cherish, my late father, who was a hero. And more than I knew, when I went to Yad Vashem and looked up the archives, I found, the things, the stories he told were based on things that really happened. I met people who were with him in the partisans. But the character is not my father. It's my father's stories are there, and the man in the story is running around getting revenge on Nazis after the war, and I shouldn't tell you how it ends, but he gets his happy returns, and the novel is not true to life, it's giving a message, and the message is life is much more important than any ideology. And I think that's the most important response to Nazism, to communism, to all those ideologies that want to shove down our throat ways, or in our ears, ways to look at the world. One little thing about some of the things I heard from some of the survivors, I met hundreds over the years, and I was struggling with religion. I still struggle with theodicy. I think that's the biggest problem of anyone who believes in and the characters also in a God who is good and all-powerful. Those contradict, right? There's some advantages to Indian religions that, as Fred knows, we can learn a lot from about spirituality. I was in India after my wife and I, after our last trip here to Australia. I asked over and over again in those early years the question about faith of the survivors who came to meet these high school students. Some of them came, spoke the first time, some of them were doing it compulsively time after time, and I got a pretty general response from most of them. Most of them were not religious people, some were, but almost all of them didn't want to talk about the subject. And they would come up with some kind of non-committal answer, and I'd ask afterwards. I never wrote the paper. I collected material for research for an MA paper. I never went on to a doctorate, even though someone was waiting for me to do that. They were very concerned about the spiritual life of the kids they were talking to. And they said that. I don't believe in God after what I went through in Auschwitz. They'd say, more than once people saying that, but I don't want to impact on these young minds by saying that publicly. There were a couple that went the other way, by the way. They found a way to some kind of notion of God, despite all, there was one woman who told me she learned the Shema in a death camp from someone else, and went on saying it the rest of her days. I dedicated the novel to my family, my parents, my late father, my brothers, and the Melbourne Jewish community. When I left for Israel, I left out of idealism and a feeling of commitment to Israel. I have to admit I also left because there were things I did not like about the Melbourne Jewish community I wanted to get away from. And that caught up with me. I was fleeing a kind of materialism, a crass materialism, which you can understand in hindsight. People wanted security after what they'd been through. And I came to a society which is in the same place. Despite the wars, despite the ideologies, people want security, and that's an understandable thing in the world. And I've learned the little I'm able to love Melbourne and the Melbourne Jewish community from far away. I read The Age over there, I read the Australian Jewish News. I'm sure other expatriate Australians and other countries do the same thing. And my relationship to this community continues. It's my childhood. It's our common childhood, most of the people here. And have a drink and l'chaim.
I'll be on my way, time and time on sea. We're bound for Australia if the ship comes in today. We'll be on our way, time and time on sea. We're bound for Australia. Father left my say. Year of 49, the wind carries board away to this land I call our home. If the ship comes in today, we'll be on our way, time and time on sea. We're bound for Australia, if the ship comes in today. Be on my way, time and time on sea. We're bound for Australia. I saw many men before across the open sea. The distant lands for me. Here we can be free if the ship comes in today. I'll be on my way, time and time on sea. We're bound for Australia, refugees and partisans, convicts and free men, a sail to new land. If the ship comes in today, be on our way, time and time on sea. We're bound for Australia. We could sail around the world. Century Tokyo. And I thought give to me. And on the favorite beach. The ship comes into this. We are our alien. Down the seven sea. We're back for Australia. The ship comes into this. We are our alien. Down the seven sea. We're back for Australia. For Australia.
An introduction here from Sam, who's been playing. And Sam is a wonderful, generous brother, as is my brother Jack, running around serving people wine. And I want to thank both of you for your great support. That's a big.
Thank